Donald Trump says at his rallies that hundreds of thousands of Americans are being murdered by immigrants every year. That is an abject lie. The actual data shows that it's 23 homicides per year that undocumented migrants commit.
Is that the case?
23. You asked how I feel about Harris. Am I like fully in the tank? No, I would like to, I think that the Democratic Party, I'm very critical of the Democratic Party at times. And I think that they've done a bunch of things that are very, very different than how the Democratic Party normally operates. I feel like one of the biggest issues that I have is that they run scared. Like the Dems oftentimes they run scared. They're very afraid of being called a radical. They're very afraid of progressive policies or like signing their name on progressive policies. And I think when Republicans run the narrative of crime hysteria, when they run the narrative of immigration panic, I think that's pretty successful. And Democrats don't usually counter narrative against that. And then of course you leave a lot of falsehoods on the table when you don't counter message against that. And then all of a sudden polls reflect that reality. And Dems love focus testing.
How would you counter message on crime and immigration?
Easy. Look at the data. Crime is at an all-time low. The minor blip that happened in crime mostly focused on homicides, and it was a one-off. It of course immediately went away. Now it's down 40% in places like Philadelphia. So, and even at that time, people were that's a fact. Use facts to address the made-up hysteria from Republicans. These are falsehoods. They're running on complete falsehoods. They're running on emotional anecdotes. And obviously, when you see a lot of homelessness, you think, oh, that's crime. That's a criminal. Like immediately, that's how people personalize the crime that they're experiencing. When in fact, like there is no organized retail theft. The notion that local news and national networks were running on organized retail theft while showing National Retailers Association numbers on shrink, when shrink was only going up, adjusted to more foot traffic, more people going out and shopping, was ridiculous. That was something that they could have easily addressed, and instead they did not do that. And I would say we, during the red wave that didn't really happen, but it turned into a red puddle. I think like in places like New York, Democrats leaning on that crime narrative and that crime hysteria actually led to worse results for the Democratic Party in comparison to other places.
Yeah.
My uncle, I know you know him.
Yeah, Cenk, yeah.
So he got swept away by the crime narratives. Like he became pretty, in my opinion, reactionary. We debate all the time about this stuff, especially on Thanksgiving. I call it Thanksgiving. He comes over, we debate on issues that we disagree on. And at the time I kept trying to be like, no, look at the data, like you're wrong. There is no like organized retail theft happening. There's no like progressive DAs that are, letting criminals off the hook or anything like that. And I think Larry Krasner, all things considered, not being kicked out, even though they undemocratically tried to push him out in Philadelphia, and then the murder rate going down, homicide rates going down in Philadelphia is a perfect response and a perfect example.
Doing your homework and knowing your facts.
That's what I want. I want Democrats to just address
like immigrants
the truth.
Don't commit more crimes than those who are native born.
Thank you. Exactly. The idea that like immigrants are doing unimaginable crimes on a regular basis. Donald Trump says at his rallies that hundreds of thousands of Americans are being murdered by immigrants every year. That is an abject lie. The actual data shows that it's 23 homicides per year that undocumented migrants commit.
Is that the case?
23. In the fiscal year 2024 so far, 23 homicides have been committed by undocumented migrants. How insane. And then he tries to pair that up by saying, and Republicans do this all the time, fast and loose with data. They play fast and loose all the time. They say, oh, what about the fentanyl deaths? 90% of the drugs that are crossing the southern border or just all of American borders are apprehended at regular points of entry. That's the Department of Homeland Security's own data, right? That's border apprehensions, right? They're not actually coming in the pockets of like otherwise law-abiding Abuelas.
What about the other
from yeah, okay, that's a great concept, but like that's not how you write policy, right? Yeah. It's like saying, okay, 23 too many murders, right? Like you could say that, but ultimately there's 10,000 plus homicides happening in this country. Like it would be like your house is on fire and you're worried about the color of the curtains. You know what I mean? Like it's a minor aspect of a major problem. So it's just pure Republican hysteria, hyper focusing on migrants, and then lying about this situation by hyper focusing on these anecdotes that are not, that are not
What's your
resembling
hope that the
reality.
progressives are going to emerge as a big force in the next 10 years in American politics?
I don't know if the progressives will emerge as a big force in the next 10 years in American politics. I have no idea.
You got to keep growing. You'll get a big platform.
I think overall, I try to do what I can. I care a lot about, labor unions. I care about building different forms of organizing to ensure that even if the Democratic Party is not always going to have your best interest in mind, you can at least force them. You can create like additional pressure valves to ensure that they do things, because ultimately this is a democracy and people do have to, like, our elected representatives have to respond to the pressure.
But we have progressives who are pushing for policies on a living wage, Medicare for all, free college, getting people out of debt, the medical debt, the student debt, the credit card debt, and more importantly on a just foreign policy, which I think we will move towards. I mean, more and more, 37 of us voted against the offensive weapons to Netanyahu. There's a greater understanding that we've got to have move towards peace and not overseas wars, and that Iraq was a colossal mistake, and that we don't want to get into a war with Iran.
I know, but I think ultimately American foreign policy is too deeply tied to the defense contractors. So in that regard, it's very difficult. I feel like there's always bipartisanship. There's always bipartisan consensus on American foreign policy. I don't know. I just don't think that Americans also, by and large, care about foreign policy all too much. Even with respect to Israel and Palestine, it's at the forefront of a lot of people's minds. But ultimately, they won't make. I think the Democratic Party and the Republicans both rely on people not making an electoral calculation on that, on a foreign policy. But as you mentioned with LBJ, foreign policy is not usually top of mind until it becomes the only thing that people care about. And I think leaving so much of this conversation in the hands of Netanyahu with the bear hook strategy is a genuinely, like, I can't comprehend it. Like, I think it's a genuinely scary prospect.
Yeah.
Both a scary prospect from, the continuation of Israel's offensive siege in Gaza, which is, completely unacceptable, but also genuinely scary because there is a capacity to open up a multiple front war here, and that would require American troops.
Well, that's what needs to be avoided, and that's why we need a pivot.
Yeah.
And, but I think that progressives like me calling for that and voting that way and trying to shift the policy, and I'm hopeful that the vice president will do it. I think it'll be helpful for her in reestablishing trust with the hundreds of thousands of voters she'll need, not just in Michigan, but in a lot of these battleground states.
Yeah, we'll see. I hope. I mean, I'm waiting to see something from the Harris ticket that shows that. But I think that a deviation on foreign policy requires genuine ideological commitment, an ideological commitment to peace.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that, like, Kamala Harris wants to win, and I like that. I think that's good. I hope that they make that calculation and choose to do the right thing in that regard. But I think people want assurances,
I understand that. There are too many people who have died. And for me, it's personal, given my grandfather's history with colonialism, that we have a just recognition of the Palestinian self-determination in addition to a secure Israel. And I look forward to continuing this conversation in the months and years ahead, because I think you're a very important progressive voice, even where we don't see always eye to eye, and you may not always agree with me. I think that we're moving. We've got to have more open conversation, honest conversation, and we've got to move this country in a direction that recognizes that so many people have been left out economically, and that has a more just foreign policy.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Don't forget, let me get that off you.
Yes.
So
I found the video where I accosted Gates, and you were right there.
Oh, good.
all right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.